Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, January 25th, 2020. Earlier this week, I talked to the American College of Financial Services, Dr. Michael Finca, about the basics of annuities and how those annuities could be impacted by the Secure Act. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I think it's important to start with the way that an economist thinks about an annuity. And to an economist, an annuity is simply a way of getting rid of a very important idiosyncratic risk that we all have when we retire, and that's the risk that we might live too long. So none of us knows how long we're going to live. There's only one financial instrument that's available that can hedge that risk of an unknown lifespan, and that's an annuity. I mean, really, that's why annuities were originally created. Historically, that's the value that annuities have provided. And in its simplest form, that is what an annuity, an income annuity, is created to solve, this problem of idiosyncratic longevity risk. And it's an idiosyncratic risk just like any other idiosyncratic risk. Any financial advisor that would be horrified if their client had 40% of their investment portfolio in Apple should be equally horrified by the fact that a client is accepting a significant amount of idiosyncratic longevity risk because it has the same impact. It means that they're taking a risk that's not compensated. I think a lot of people are seeing the passage of the Secure Act as the breakdown of the final barrier to incorporating annuitization truly into decumulation. And of course, it's going to be an interesting pathway, I think, between where we are right now and where we're going to be in 10 years from today. But I'm one of those who hopes that we begin to start thinking intelligently about the right ways to use annuitization in retirement savings. It'll I think especially for the income, I mean, the whole purpose of ERISA is retirement income security. It is literally the RIS in ERISA. Yet we've never gotten there. And this is really an opportunity within the defined contribution space to get a lot closer to retirement income security. And I think especially for less sophisticated participants who may be vulnerable at the rollover stage when they move out of plan, this can provide a lot of really good alternatives. I think people's perceptions are generally negative of annuities, and there are many who have spent a lot of time and effort trying to poison the name annuity, and it's not completely undeserved. And when I run consumer surveys, what we see is that people want what annuities provide, but they don't like annuities. And they think annuities are something other than what economists think of when they talk about annuities. Now, the annuity product structure can encompass a wide range of potential financial products. And it's easy to, I think, point to the worst actors within the annuity space and try to define the word annuity based on the behavior of the worst actors in the annuity space, the steak dinner type of approach to selling annuities. But in reality, annuities are a product structure, just like any other product structure, just like a mutual fund. And there are good mutual funds and there are bad mutual funds. Bad in the sense that they're too expensive for what the benefit they're providing to consumers. But I think as the market matures, what we're going to see is a increasing understanding of annuities and a movement towards more competitive products. At the American College, we do a lot of research, but we also do advisor education in the form of our wealth management certified professional and our retirement income certified professional. In both of those programs, we provide what I think is a clear and an objective overview of how to evaluate some of these complex products. And I think that that's necessary within the financial advising world. If you're truly going to try to put together a plan that's in the best interest of your clients, you need to know how to evaluate these products in general, when they're useful, when they're not so useful. And I also think that consumer perception, it's something the Alliance for Lifetime Income has been working on, cracking this nut of changing consumer perceptions about the product of annuity. It is a product that provides true value to consumers, and it can make people's lives in retirement better than they are right now, with all the uncertainty that they're accepting when it comes to fear about their money running out in old age. And I think the more education we can do, the better. There's more than one approach to putting together the right retirement income plan for a client. I'm certainly not going to say that consumers shouldn't be wary. They should be wary of any financial product or any financial approach. They should get as much information as possible. And frankly, I wish there was more information out there that was easily digestible that consumers could use to help make these types of choices. Even in my own research, I have tried to provide these types of choices to subjects in a very clear fashion. What I find consistently is that when you provide them with those choices, they're far more likely to select a retirement income option that incorporates some amount of annuitization. I think that's but you need to give consumers those options. I think that when you look at what they do in reality, it's not necessarily what would make them the happiest. But I think that they're just so infrequently given the kind of choices that they need to make. Perhaps the industry needs to give some thought to standardizing products so that they're easier for consumers to compare and evaluate, and provide more actual education about how the product features work, and maybe minimize the complexity to some extent.
Last week, I spoke to MarketWatch's Alessandro Melito about the changes to inheriting wealth in 2020. Let's take a look.
Yeah, so the rule made a few changes. It allowed more open access to annuities. It let small businesses expand their retirement offerings to employees. But one thing that was particularly controversial among advisors and soon-to-be beneficiaries is the way that people can inherit IRAs and 401ks. So prior to the Secure Act passing, a non-spousal beneficiary, so somebody who is not a husband or wife, they had their life expectancy, that it was an option to take out required minimum distributions over their lifetime. Mm-hmm. That was just one option. Another one had to do with 5 years. But under this Secure Act, you actually only have 10 years. So that means that you have 10 years from the day that you inherit the account to withdraw all the assets. So instead of the prior rules where you would take a required minimum distribution every year, you don't have that once a year anymore, that rule, but you do have to withdraw all of the assets by the end of the 10th year. And the reason why it was controversial is because there are tax consequences to that. So this particular provision of the bill alone generates most of the tax revenue that the government will likely benefit from, as opposed to like adding annuities and things like that.
Sure.
But it means that if you are a beneficiary who's, say, 40 years old and you have 10 years to withdraw the assets, you might still be in the peak earning years in those 40s and in the beginning of your 50s, which means that you will be hit with a larger tax bill than if you were able to take small portions of that inheritance over your lifetime. And also another particularly dangerous aspect of this provision, one advisor told me, it has to do with trusts. So say mm-hmm. you access this inheritance through a trust after the passing of the Secure Act, which was official, it was fully enacted and everything by January 1st. If you are in that particular type of trust called like a pass-through trust or a conduit trust, you might be locked out of your money for 10 years. So those trusts, like the conduit trust and the pass-through trust, they're very popular for people who want to have a little more control even in death. So they might say, like, I'm going to give my 25-year-old grandson this money through a trust, but he's kind of, he spends a lot of money and he might not be responsible with it. So we're going to have him take out that money slowly. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That's just what some people want to do. And if your grandson or grandchildren or anybody else doesn't exactly need that money, that's an option. But if you still have that language in your trust where they take the required minimum distributions every year, or they take the language would just say required minimum distribution, there technically aren't required minimum distributions under the Secure Act for an inherited IRA or 401k. The only actual technical RMD is after the 10th year, which is when you have to take out all of your money. So then say you have, I don't know, $100,000. That $100,000 is going to be taxed because it came out all at one time in a lump sum. Right. So if you are a benefactor and you do have that type of trust, you have to run, not walk, to an attorney because your trust firm, whoever you want to go to make sure that that language is changed, because you could be setting up your kids or grandkids or loved one for a really bad tax surprise. You don't have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in an IRA to give it to a loved one when you pass on. So this is going to affect pretty much anybody who has a 401k or IRA that they leave behind. But it's important to plan ahead. So if you do expect to be getting an inheritance through the form of an IRA or a 401k and you are not a husband or wife of that account holder, then you should really implement some sort of financial plan, because you don't necessarily want to take all the money at once if you are a higher earner. But you also need to figure out what the best strategy would be for yourself and your tax consequences.
And when we come back, how can you age better and more gracefully in 2020? Stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. On Thursday, I spoke with author and columnist Carrie Hannon about ways that we can age more gracefully in 2020. Let's take a look.
So bear with me, because I'm going to kind of just walk you through the year a little bit. You know, this is the time of year that everyone's like, oh, I'm going to make resolutions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you write down on maybe your big calendar all these wonderful things you're going to do this year. But what I look at is this is a great time in January to do something none of us ever want to do, which is a budget. Okay, so take this chance to write down what your spending budget's going to be this year. It will really make a big difference in your life. So write down, you know, some of the things you spend money on, the regular expenses, you know, your mortgage or your utility bills and things. But then take a look at some of these discretionary things that are going to come up for this year that you may not have every year. And there are a lot of these. For example, this year I've got a nephew getting married and a niece getting married. So I've got to travel for these. My husband and I have a trip to France for 10 days to Normandy. So these are budget items. I've already paid for that air ticket, but I'm going to have expenses while I'm there. So start to pencil out what's your year going to look like in terms of spending, and where might you be able to, you know, kind of budget for that so that you have a cushion. And, you know, it's a good time also to look at your emergency fund. We don't know some of these unexpected things that can happen. And I have animals, and believe me, these vet bills can knock you back. So, you know, you need to have just set a little aside sort of in case of, or if you have a health issue that comes up. Nobody wants these things, but you've got to make yourself think about it and make some room in your budget for it. So look at the emergency fund, look at what might be coming down the lane for you this year. And then this is a great time to review your credit report, okay? Excellent.
Yeah.
Look at the three big credit bureaus. And easy to do. You can get a free credit report at annualcreditreport.com. So I really encourage people. And if there are mistakes, you can fix those. Contact the credit bureau, contact whoever provided that information to them, and that's all available to you on the credit report. But you have to do it in writing, and they have to follow up. And and there's quarterly taxes if you do that. I work for myself, so we're almost ready for those, right? So take a look at that. So that's January. Do that. I mean, make yourself do a calendar that's your personal finance calendar, and try to be disciplined about this, because this is, we know that money, is the biggest stumbling block to achieving our dreams and what we really want out of life. So these are baby steps that you can do to make sure you can sleep at night throughout the year. And like in February, I like the idea of, we love Valentine's Day, but why not make a money date with your partner if you have one? And this is, I think it's really important when you can have this sort of financial honesty with one another. What a great gift. So skip the flowers, have this little conversation. And it's not necessarily easy, but I think, it's a great way to make sure that you're both on the same team this year, so that you can root for each other and the things that you might want to spend money on different things this year. So let's talk about that. This is not a hard thing, and it's not stressful to do. Maybe but you can catch mistakes, and if there are mistakes on them, you can have trouble getting loans. You can have even getting a lease on things. There's all kinds of things that mistakes on your credit report can reflect on your financial life moving forward. So I really think it's important that everyone takes the time to do that. So if we skip through, Jeff, the rest of the year, we've got taxes in April. In June, hey, why not make that a mid-year time to do a checkup on your portfolio? Do you need to rebalance? Where are things, where do you stand right now? And this is a really good time to do that, because the market, even if you look at what happened in 2019, I looked at my report actually at the end of my portfolio at the end of the year, and it was really out of skew, right, to what my tolerance was for risk moving forward. So this is a good time to sit down with your advisor. If you do it yourself, fine, but make yourself do that. It's a really important step to do. Let's wrap up the year by just, take a look at some charitable giving. This is your time in December. Put that down in a calendar. Okay, how much do I want to give to charity this year? And there is a standard deduction, of course, but some of us, particularly if you work for yourself, have an opportunity to perhaps give a little bit more. So I think it's really important to take a look at that and look at your medical savings accounts. Do you have some unreimbursed medical expenses that you need to, if you have a flexible savings account at work, this is the time to use that, because they're often use it or lose it. And again, health savings accounts are really important, and this is a good time to look at what you might contribute to one. And forward, these are just smart financial tips, and they're good things. So I think it's really important. And another thing, Jeff, that you may have already mentioned, another point is double check your withholding. It's always good at the end of the year if you're going to start a new job, and there's a new form to do that now. So the form, the W-4 is a different form this year. So I think it's really important to take a look at that.
And in our last segment, I sat down with financial wellness coach Megan Cipriani to learn more about her role and how Americans can better save and plan for their financial futures. Let's take a look.
Jeff, essentially what I do is I really help people see their money more clearly. I help them see their assets, their debt, their cash flow, and their wealth protectors like insurance and expert advisors. It's really hard to actually get a handle and see your money clearly, and that's what a coach can help a client do. So essentially, I'm doing the work with a client and basically busy professionals and families to get them in shape to eventually work with a financial advisor. So to get them into a shape where they've got money and wealth to manage, and then I pass them along to a financial advisor. So I'm helping with like the blocking and tackling, the budgeting, debt pay down, integrating benefits at work with what benefits you need at home. I'm not selling insurance or investments. It's really a fee-for-service model. And essentially, whereas a financial advisor would really aim to work with their clients, for the remainder of their lifetime and even with their children and legacy, I'm working with my clients for essentially a much shorter period of time. It's really from 4 to 6 months in general. And I'm really trying to help them put together a plan to organize and optimize finances, and then give them the tools and show them how to manage their finances on their own. We're working together at the beginning during that 4 to 6 month period, like on a weekly or bi-weekly schedule. But the goal for them is to be able to spend, once they stop the engagement and they kind of launch, that they're just spending an hour or two per month on their finances. That's really as little as it takes to be in a position to build a strong financial foundation. Financial literacy is really important. So you've got it here in Massachusetts. They're pushing to get a financial literacy requirement at the high school level. I am 100% behind that. I think where financial wellness just takes it a step further. So financial wellness is the combination of the information and education financially. And then the step further, the wellness part, it kind of incorporates what exactly does my household need to do? What steps do I need to take to implement the education I've just learned to be able to improve my outcomes, my financial outcomes later on? Student loan debt, Jeff, as you know, 1.6 trillion. It's one of the largest components of debt in America today. It's certainly a concern for many folks. I'm working with a client right now, for example, who is 31, and she's still paying off student loan debt that she borrowed at 18 and 19. Didn't finish her degree, but she still has the student loan debt. So it's really about meeting the client where they're at. So there are a couple of different paths you can take. The competing goals, as you talked about, is savings versus debt pay down. Some families want to focus on the debt pay down. They're willing to sacrifice. Way easier to sacrifice when you're in your 20s, like sacrificing lifestyle, than when you're in your 40s and 50s. And so it's really just kind of trying to meet the client where they're at. If they want to go for it and kind of temporarily put lifestyle on hold in order to focus on the debt pay down, then that's the plan we put together. Other clients don't want to sacrifice lifestyle as much or feel that they can't. So they're going to just extend out the amount of time that it's going to take them to repay their debt. The clients that I'm working with essentially are folks in their late 20s to mid 50s. These are folks that are pretty high income earners. They are very busy. And so just therefore don't have the time to put their attention on this and really don't have the tools and resources to do it. So these are clients that are coming to me that are typically not in financial distress. They just want to get organized and optimized. I have five broad principles that I teach clients. And as you said, it really doesn't matter where they are in the socioeconomic spectrum. But number one, most important principle is to spend less than you earn. And this
makes sense.
Makes sense. It's super easy to understand, but in reality, it's really difficult for people to do because even if you have a steady income, you actually don't know how much money is coming in and going out each month because your bills typically are all monthly, but you do have some quarterly bills. You may have some annual bills. So it's really hard thing to do. So putting together a spending allocation plan, whether you want to call it a budget or just a spending plan, is super important. The second thing is to have emergency funds in place. And this is something I know one of your guests recently spoke about, so I'm not going to go too far into depth on that. But really, really important. The size of the emergency fund is really going to vary based on whether you have consumer debt that you're actively trying to pay off or whether you just simply have mortgage debt. The third is to pay off and avoid non-mortgage debt. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, we talked about the duration, how long it's going to take you to do that. It really depends on meeting the client where they're at. And then finally, building wealth using building wealth using retirement plans that you can access through work and building wealth through your primary residence, using real estate, which is going to typically increase in value over time. I think sometimes people feel that they have to do something exotic or strange, or invest directly in the stock market to build their financial stability over time, and that's just not true. And then finally, to wrap it all up, an important thing is to make sure that you have wealth protectors in place. So do you have the right insurance in place? And are you using expert advisors like tax advisors, investment advisors, and so forth?
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly, but we're not done for the week, because tomorrow we've got our podcast, BRN Sunday, where I'm joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services to discuss all the issues related to retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more. You're not going to want to miss this show. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeb Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.